Hello and welcome to the session today covering the increasing threat of ransomware in education. My name's Ed Rennick and I'm one of the partner managers here at Redstor. Redstor have been protecting and recovering data for the education sector for over 15 years now, so we are absolutely delighted to have been able to organize this session alongside our partners at the Cyber Resilience Centres and our customer Haberdashers Monmouth Schools. We are delighted that so many could attend what will be a very informative session. And the session will be covering today a quick summary of the situation as we see it, the threat landscape and best practices that will be delivered by Chris White, the BRIM organization or the CRC and what support it can offer you, delivered by Nick Bell. And then we have guest speakers from Haberdashers Schools talking about a recent ransomware incident they experienced and how they navigated that. We'll do a very short wrap up and then we'll move into the final section, which is the Q&A. If you do have any questions through the presentation, feel free to drop those in the comments. They'll be collected and we'll cover as many of those as we can at the end. So I'm delighted to introduce our speakers. We have from the NPCC or CRC, Chris White, left college and started a career in computing with a multinational technology company. Then joining the police in the mid-90s, experienced various departments focusing on technological roles. Always looking for solutions and keeping abreast of technology, he joined the Southeast Regional Organized Crime Unit as a police cybersecurity advisor and prevent sergeant, delivering the national cybersecurity strategy where he has been working within various sectors, raising the awareness of cybersecurity, coaching and encouraging positive behavior change with organizations assisting those in the midst of cyber incidents and managing the offenders responsible. We also have Nick Bell, is a Detective Superintendent with the National Cybercrime Program and also a fellow Geordie. He is a career detective with 27 years in the police and he joined the National Cybercrime Program from the Southeast Regional Organized Crime Unit where he was head of cybercrime, economic crime, and digital forensics. He's an experienced senior investigating officer in cyber and economic crime, leading to complex cybercrime, cryptocurrency fraud, money laundering, and confiscation investigations. His role within the NCP, or the National Cybercrime Program, is to lead the implementation of the Cyber Resilience Centre network across England and Wales, and he manages the key strategic stakeholder partnerships with the National CRC, CSCs and the National Cyber Protect, the Home Office, Chief Officers and PCCs and the private sector and academia. He also leads a national digital forensics program for ISO accreditation for on-scene acquisition for Team Cyber UK and policing as a whole. And he also oversees implementation of a new cyber and digital specials and volunteers program. And from Haberdashers Monmouth Schools, who were recently subject to a ransomware attack, we have James Murphy O'Connor, the principal, and Fred Wellsby, director of IT. So the country has responded at a high pace to the need to connect remote workers and collaborate online due to recent events. However, this has led to challenges associated with the way organizations operate on a daily basis regarding the management and protection of their most valuable asset, their data. Data has become currency of the highest value, and as such, having your data stored locally without adequate air gaps can leave you prone to threat-based attacks looking to take control of your data and ultimately hold you to ransom. The DfE has recently issued guidance to the entire education sector to take a considered approach to data protection using some guiding principles. 1, they are backing up the right data. 2, that the backups are held offline. And 3, proving the ability to recover data and services from backups. Now, during these times of restricted access to organizational sites to resolve issues with on-premise equipment, to change tapes, the value of a cloud-first approach has never been so tangible. And lots of data we're now seeing going into cloud environments like 365 and G Suite, and your latest iterations of large-scale volumes of data are now likely to be distributed between cloud applications like 365 and laptops recently deployed to enable home working. Microsoft are responsible for the availability of the platforms they run, but do also indicate that they do not take responsibility for the protection, availability, and recovery of that data. The policies are always evolving and tend to be very complicated. And if you aren't constantly monitoring the data and investing time to understand that landscape, it's easy for things like critical data to fall through the cracks. Data saved locally on laptops, on hardware, and users that are not accustomed to this creates additional problems. And finally, running out of disk and long lead times due to some of the shortages on hardware. Why would you seek to have data that's not been accessed for over 6 months to a year, consuming valuable disk in your primary infrastructure, and also being backed up when it never changes? Why not optimize your primary environment by using Redstor's archiving functionality? And in the unlikely event anyone does need that old file that never gets accessed, they can rehydrate it instantly using our tool sets. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Chris White, who will cover the threat landscape and best practices.
Good morning, everyone. Chris White from the Cyber Resilience Centre for the South East. I'm going to run through for the next 20 minutes a few things that I would probably recommend that you have a look at. So 5 recommended areas that cybersecurity should be focusing on is obviously backing up your data, protecting from malware, so malware protection, which is malware and antivirus, keeping your devices safe, using passwords to protect your data, and understanding the basis of a phishing attack, which is the payload of how the threat actors get stuff onto your systems. So one of the key things which we've had feedback through over the last couple of months, if not years, is training. And certainly feedback is a gift. And you can see there that staff and management have become aware from media and the news that various things externally, without us having to make them aware, they've become more receptive to training awareness that we've tried to implement and become more streetwise. So that is talking about where staff feel obligated to do the traditional training because they don't think it's going to be of value to them. If you pitch the training that it's going to benefit the employee or the staff member, that it's going to benefit them at work and at home, equally a cyber attack could wipe out hundreds or thousands of family photos stored on your computer at home. It could wipe out the accounts and pension data if they're at work. So behavior does breed behavior, and that's what we're going to look at today. So when we look at the stats from the Cybersecurity Breach Survey 2020, you can see from the left-hand side here that companies in the last 12 months have experienced cyber attacks. Only 23% of them have experienced cyber attacks once in the last 12 months. Stretching all the way over to the right-hand side, where you've got companies that experience cyber attacks several times a day, to those that don't even know how many times they've been attacked in a day. They are, I guess, quite scary figures when you look at them from the outset, but applying certain technical security controls, certain processes that look after your staff, you can control this and eradicate it. So when we look at breaches or incidents or events to see how they're happening, you can see there from the figures quite obvious that the biggest threat we're receiving at the moment is from phishing emails, which is what they're called in the industry, but they're fraudulent emails or just emails directing you to fraudulent websites. You can see there that above all of the other threats, that is the one that's still having the most reasonable amount of success. Going down the list, yes, you probably recognize some of these terms. People impersonating to be people or organizations, that's not quite them. Viruses, spyware, malware, and then hacking. Everyone does generally blame hacking, but you can see that, unfortunately, we're probably the worst to blame is the phishing emails that are getting in. Ransomware is obviously in the press at the moment. Ransomware is actually on the decrease, but the attacks involving ransomware are becoming more targeted, and they are actually demanding bigger ransoms to organizations. You'll see that organizations are being targeted more than individuals. Why? Well, criminals can demand more money from an organization, and an organization is more likely to pay up than an individual victim. So if I got ransomware on my computer at home and I'd looked at the computer and thought, damn it, I've got some spreadsheets on there, I've got some photos, but I'm not going to pay £50,000 to get that back. Whereas if you are an operating company and you need access to that data again, the likelihood there's going to be a high chance that you would pay your money to get it back. The UK government obviously don't support the paying of ransomware, and we advise that you don't get down that route, but you all have your own resilience policies that you should follow. What we can add is that ransomware actors are also becoming increasingly sophisticated in their targeting. They will investigate your network before they do anything. They'll understand your network. They'll look for your business critical systems and your data and find out whether or not you have got the ability to pay. So they do their homework. It is a global problem. When we look at outcomes after you're involved in a incident or an event, when you look at small medium enterprise, the cost to get you back up and running, whether that's actually cost to hire a third-party IT supplier to come in and fix your systems if you don't have the skills in-house, or whether or not it's just you've lost business, you've been unable to complete business continuity. SMEs, they suffered just on average over £3,200, and then the bigger companies are just over £5,000 to get yourself up and running again. But when you look at the impacts there, going from the top down, yes, an attack would highlight that you must have the need for some new equipment or some new product or a new service because you just didn't have it installed correctly, or you just didn't have it. You may not have the expertise on your payroll to deal with these incidents. Your staff are unable to carry out their duties. Yes, there's going to be repair and recovery costs. Your shares or your company finances might have taken a hit as a result of this. You probably couldn't sell or deliver a service during the period that you were actually offline. With that comes the complaints from the customers, then your reputational damage on probably social media or some of these advisory sites. People might actually just disappear and go off to competitors, and then you might have had to give out some compensation, and again there could be some legal financial costs to that. Certainly when we talk about this, it is known as like a taboo topic. Everyone just assumes everyone knows what to do with a phishing email, recognize a phishing email or fraudulent email. There are things which you can do. So if we look at this phishing email, which is doing the rounds this year, unfortunately, there is the campaign calendar. The criminals use a campaign calendar just like we use a campaign calendar. The likes of Valentine's, Easter, Christmas, Halloween, they will also stick to a calendar as well. So this one was designed for students when they were going back to uni. Again, if you look at it, just get a feel for the email, see who it's from, just quickly read it. You don't have to do anything, but just quickly read it, and you can see this one is generally come from HM Revenue Customs Tax. I'd probably ask everyone to put their hand up to say who hasn't had this, but certainly it's not often that the government use hotmail.co.uk. We have our own government email domains which we use, but certainly they're being directed to go to this website in the middle. You can see the blue one, http hm.gov university cam UK. We see the dot between the .com and the one before that, MGIFINC. That's your key indicator there. If you click on that, that's going to take you to a malicious website. Please don't click on it, but I can tell you now that that website has already been taken down. But the time between the website creation and the website takedown, that is when the victims will click on that, and that's where the criminals get their money generated. So what happens next? Because I know curiosity kills the cat, and we always like to see what happens, but certainly click on a link and it takes you to a fraudulent website. So this one isn't running either, but effectively this is all recorded in real time. So you can see there, website's up and running, you've got the mouse in the middle, you've clicked on an error, you can see the circles going round. You think, oh, this is a slow website, or my internet connection's a bit slow. You get that blue screen that's pausing at the top. You can see now it's got not responding. Down the bottom, you've seen turn on Windows Security Center services highlighted. That's turned off, which is a worrying thing to me. We wonder what the computer's doing, but it is up to a lot of stuff in the background that you just can't see. So we're about 35 seconds into this, 40 seconds in, the encryption, the ransomware encryption has now taken place. So all of your files on the computer, photos, JPEGs, Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, text files, everything is now encrypted, unfortunately. You can't see it, you can't access it, it's unavailable. The only thing that you can see, will be the instructions on how to get your information back. So that is like a short exposure, short introduction of how ransomware works. You just lose all of your files, and the only file that's visible are the instructions which you can see there on how to get your stuff back. So depending on obviously the speed of your computers and the size of the networks, these ransomware attacks unfortunately can take place quite quickly. However, there are things that you can do. So technical security controls, what have you got in place, or what do you need to put in place to stop these sort of things happening? So if you look at the top, base it on that last video that you've seen. A phishing email comes into your company, someone accidentally clicks on it. Now, if it is a recognized weakness with an operating system, they click on a link, but you already apply your software updates. The known weakness is shored up because it isn't there because you have the latest operating system. So the virus can't get through because it can't exploit the weakness that isn't there. We go down to up-to-date malware protection. If you've installed antivirus and anti-malware in your system and it is up-to-date and is working, if the virus actually tried to download, it would also protect it because it would recognize it and deny it. Firewalls, if your staff click on a link and it wants to take you to a fraudulent website, if it's on what's known as a blacklist or whitelist, implicit deny, you cannot go to that website because the firewall will just prevent you from going there in the first place. Password policies. Again, we do need to get better at passwords, allowing our staff to have longer, more complex passwords, and to enable them to do that, again, I'll support the use of password managers within your organization as well. Restricting IT admin and access rights. We see far too many companies that allow all computers to be on administrative rights. It's unnecessary, it doesn't need to happen, and we need to just restrict that. There's the principle of least privilege, that you allow people to have the least privilege, and until they actually need more access, they request it. And again, backing up your data securely. If you need to have a backup, an off-site backup or an offline backup, it's key that you have a backup service available to you. Don't forget as well that obviously a lot of your computers are all linked through a network, and we're now moving into this new agile environment where we have mobile phones or mobile devices. We need those to all be covered by the same security policies as well. Rules for storing and moving personal data securely. We still see a lot of people USB sticks and allowing people to move USB sticks around and plugging them in to different computers. We need to be moving away from that, totally moving away from that and going to cloud services. Monitoring our users as well, just seeing what they get up to in relation to clicking on phishing emails. And it's not Big Brother jumping in here, but it is monitoring where we see that certain users are clicking on too many phishing emails. It's just doing some education, just helping them out. They may not understand, and having that culture where people feel confident to go and speak to the IT team and not having that fear factor, and enabling them to go, this is where you've gone wrong, and just giving them some extra training in that area. Again, if you're offering free Wi-Fi or offering staff certain Wi-Fi and guests and visitors, they need to be segregated. You need to have them on separate networks. So when we talk about all these initiatives and improving cybersecurity within your organisations, there's a lot of free material out there. Now, I know you might not have all heard of the National Cybersecurity Centre, but they're the go-to place in the UK for sound, trusted cyber advice. At home, and individuals, CyberAware is a very good website for you to go to, and it talks about how you can turn on two-factor authentication, where to get antivirus help from, how to generally set your computers up safely at home. Then we move over to the 10 steps of cybersecurity, and that's more designed for organizations on how they should be setting up their computers correctly at work. And all of these documents are free to access yourself from the National Cybersecurity Centre. We've got specific documents here for the small business guide, the small charity guide. And again, if your organization is big enough to have a boardroom, there's certainly a place for you where you can send people to start these discussions around the boardroom table on what is the common minimal standard that you should be working to. Cyber Essentials, so this is a scheme which is backed by the UK government. It's a benchmark, it's a minimum level where you can get your systems self-assessment, and then the Cyber Essentials Plus is an external vendor will come in and assess your systems to see whether or not they're set up securely to a common minimal standard, which is a good standard, and people can then see that you're taking cybersecurity seriously. Certainly, I've seen evidence that you can only bid for certain contracts if you have Cyber Essentials accreditation. And again, there's some top tips for staff. So we should plough quite a lot of our time into training for staff and keeping them up to date of the latest tactics. There's an e-learning package which you can actually download and have within your own organisation. You can apply your own pass rate, you can apply your own logos, you can apply your own spin on it, but certainly that, the top tips for staff from the NCSC, is another package which is available for free for organisations. So when we look at your resilience, we're probably always familiar with fire alarm testing. I know quite a lot of companies have it on Fridays at 11 o'clock where the alarm goes off, you'll walk out into the car park and you just know what to do when you hear the fire alarm. Again, if you have a medical incident at work, there's always the first aid health and safety advisors at work, that or the first aiders, which will come and assist. But have you ever done a cyber drill? Do you have a cyber drill policy? Do you have a practice? Do you learn from incidents? Do you drill? Is there an incident plan so all staff follow the same plan? Certainly, when you do have an incident, is there someone responsible for the restore process? Do you have a response and recovery plan? These are all the things which you should be considering along with your fire and first aid these days. So some of the services that the Cyber Resilience Centre offer, they're up there. There's already 8 services. So the corporate internet investigation, what we can do to gather information about your business, what we can do to gather information about the individuals. We can deliver some training. We can remotely look at your systems, see what can be accessed, see what vulnerabilities and weaknesses there are. So I'll let you ponder over that one, have a look at that one. But certainly these are all of the services which the Cyber Resilience Centre can offer. So that's my quick input, and now handing over to Nick.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Nick Bell. I'm a Detective Superintendent with the National Cybercrime Programme. I'm going to talk to you firstly in relation to what Team Cyber UK is, the challenges we face, and the National Cybercrime Programme. So the next slide, please, Chris. Thank you. So Team Cyber UK, firstly, if you went back 5 or 6 years and you or your organisation were a victim of a burglary, say, your response would be you get patrol in the first response, you may get a detective from CID, scenes of crime would turn up, and potentially neighbourhoods to give you some crime prevention advice. But at the same time, if you were a victim of a cybercrime offence and you rang the local police, there would likely be no response from the police. They may refer you to action fraud. But since then, policing has evolved with a local, regional, national, international victim care and protect response. So Team Cyber Care, this is what we call the UK's cyber police response. And if you think of it as a pyramid, nationally we have the National Crime Agency, National Cybercrime Unit. We have the National Cyber Security Centre, National Protect, Prevent, Prepare capabilities. Regionally, we have the Regional Organised Crime Unit network with a cybercrime unit in every region with a digital forensics team. You have the Metropolitan Police, Police Scotland, PSNI within that network. And at force level, you have a cybercrime unit within every force across England and Wales. National teams, they investigate attacks against central government, UK essential services, against the UK economy. The ROCUs investigate offences against medium to large organisations, risks to local government. And at force level, the force teams investigate localised incidents against SMEs or individuals. And then if there's a national cyber emergency and another WannaCry, collectively, Team Cyber UK can be deployed to respond. So we do have a cybercrime unit in every one of the 43 forces, and they have key performance indicators that 100% of every case will be investigated and receive a protect response, every cyber report. Within National Protect, you see coordinated activity at a national, regional, and local level. It's a really confused marketplace, so key is providing consistent, clear, and timely advice from the NCSC and National Protect. We have a National Protect strategy to understand cyber threats, victimology, and with intelligence sharing, to provide support, advice, to reduce repeat victimization. But a lot of this is really to empower organizations to protect themselves, increase the understanding, provide fast-time advice, and the tools and knowledge to defend yourselves, provide support to victims. And we do consider absolutely the operational and the reputational needs of business, and not just the policing needs. To increase capability, to work in partnership with government, external partners, to grow the volunteer network, to mainstream cyber protect knowledge across policing. You know, we accept that 75% of cybercrime is preventable, and we work to prevent the attacks occurring, but also within Team Cyber UK to make the UK a hostile place for cyber criminals to operate. We do face significant challenges. Report levels of cybercrime are low. We have hostile jurisdictions, state-supported, state-sponsored, where it is difficult to get real-world outcomes, and often threat actors operate outside of the UK. And we take complex cyber cases through the criminal justice system, and then often see a lack of effective and appropriate sentencing. We continue to see cyber criminals, as Chris said, exploiting current events, with the calendars. Ransomware groups still present the most visible cybercrime threat to the UK. Highly capable organized crime groups continue to develop and improve their tradecraft. This quarter alone, we've seen an increase in attacks against the academic sector, including high-profile attacks against universities. The timing of these attacks coincide with increased pressure on this sector, such as the release of the grades and establishments reopening. Within the National Cybercrime Programme, we continue to develop technically across cybercrime. I suppose we do see ourselves as pioneers of change. There's been a huge development over recent years in relation to cybercrime investigation, dark web capabilities, cryptocurrency investigation, covert operations, activity across all what we call the 4 Ps: pursue, which are the investigations; protect, providing protect to businesses; preparing for the future, and also preventing individuals and OCGs becoming involved in cybercrime. We've also recently launched the Police Cyber Alarm. Member organizations can sign up, and this software identifies and hoovers up suspicious activity on firewalls, and also identifies suspicious malicious activity. It enables organizations to minimize those vulnerabilities, but also we can capture that threat intelligence. And we're also working closely on a national reporting platform just to make it simpler for individuals, organizations, businesses to report cybercrime. Can I have the next slide, please? And the Cyber Resilience Centres. So what is a Cyber Resilience Centre? The SME business community is vulnerable due to cyber security cost and often a lack of technical understanding on how to protect your business. Same for all organizations. Also, that consistent protect message is vital. Policing needs absolutely to reach out across partnerships, like we haven't done before, when the Cyber Resilience Centre Network brings together so much knowledge, experience across business, academia, and police to combat cybercrime and protect business and organizations, but also to provide a better service. So we support the organization's needs. The CRCs have boards, advisory groups that can extend the reach into the business community and support organizations. We have trusted partners that deliver Cyber Essentials Plus. We'll have cyber expert groups which identify best practice innovation across the regions. And we provide free core membership and other membership options and the low-cost cybersecurity services, as Chris described earlier. So it's very much, we are seen as a major part of the Protect network in relation to support organizations and businesses. The link between the National Cybersecurity Centre and local businesses, organizations, to ensure that you receive real-time advice in response to emergent threats or live incidents. We work with students from universities, so we take, and this is probably the really exciting aspect of the Cyber Resilience Centres from our perspective. We work with the brightest and best talent from the top universities, And what we're doing is developing a student pipeline. Students are mentored and supported to engage with business and organizations to deliver low-cost cybersecurity services. And then this student talent pipeline, we want to nurture this talent back into policing. So the students in the future will be career ready with strong cyber security skill sets in policing and business. Nationally, we do now have a footprint of a CRC in every region in England and Wales. In the Northeast, we have 2 regions covered for the Northeast and Yorkshire and Humber. We've got the Greater Manchester Cyber Resilience Centre, which is going to expand to cover the whole of the Northwest, West Midlands, East Midlands, Southeast, Southwest. Wales is due to go live next month, and we're just finalising the Eastern region currently. And then plans for next year is London. But one key thing within this confused marketplace is trust and confidence. It's really, really important. So the CRCs provide a trusted brand. It's not for profit and provides low-cost cyber security services. With police being the partner in the centres, business can have trust in the brand. The fact that the centres are not for profit, business and organisations can have complete confidence in the message and the support they receive. And we deliver affordable cybersecurity services. So we do see the CRC network as the go-to centre in every region, and that sort of trusted nexus for current cybersecurity advice, guidance, support, partnership, and low-cost services. And just the next slide, and that's it from me. And thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thanks for that, guys. Right, let me just. Okay, all right. So now I'd like to welcome our friends at Haberdashers Monmouth Schools who were recently hit by a ransomware attack and have kindly agreed to speak today about their experience, how they managed it, and ultimately what the outcome was from the incident. So before we begin, James, would you mind just giving a quick synopsis of Haberdashers and your role at the school, and Fred, if you would be kind enough to do the same. You might still be on mute, guys.
Yeah, this is Fred here. Is James online?
No. Okay. Yeah, I thought he was on with you, Fred. It's fine. While James is still coming on, Fred, would you mind just giving a brief bio of your role at the school, and then if you would be able to help kind of set the scene around the way your IT was set up pre-incident, how you first found out you'd been hit, maybe cover how did it get into your systems, what was the immediate impact, and how did you begin recovering from this?
Okie dokie. Right, I'm Fred Wellsby, the Director of IT for the Haberdashers Monmouth Schools. There's 5 schools in the town, from pre-prep up to sixth form. I've been working for the school for 14 years. We've had various incidents in the past, but this is the first major one that we've had. Quick brief view of how our systems were set up before the incident. We've got a small IT team of 8 people to look after the 5 schools. We were set up, all of the IT team were domain admins. Not a very bright idea, but it was done for convenience and has been done historically within the school, even though the security landscape has changed. We just delivered, due to the global pandemic and working from home, we just delivered new Microsoft Surface devices to all of our teaching staff and installed new touch screens into all the classrooms. This allowed the teachers to be able to both work from home and in the classroom, depending on the current situation. The teachers have to move from room to room, as the class bubbles were meant to be stationary. When they moved from room to room, we found that they needed to calibrate their device to the screen each time, and that required local admin access to the device to actually access the Microsoft calibration tool. So because we had so little time to get all of the surfaces, the classrooms set up and all the devices out to the staff, it was decided that we would give them local admin access. This enabled them to calibrate the screens each time they moved from room to room, which was convenient. Also, when they took their devices home, if they wanted to install a printer or another device to connect to their Surface, they needed local admin access. So that's not a good idea. But due to previous minor malware incidents that we've had over the past 4 or 5 years, I decided that we needed to have a substantial backup. So I decided to engage with Redstor to have a cloud backup system installed. This was only about a year ago, to work in concert with our local backups. So that's basically the current setup and how we were set up at the time the incident happened. Now moving on to the how we first found out that we'd been hit by an incident. I came into work and said good morning to my engineer and said, how are things? And he said, it's a disaster. And we found that he'd been downstairs. Someone had reported problems with the internet. He went down into the server room, and instead of being lots of nice green flashy lights, we had lots of orange lights, which meant that the servers weren't happy at all. So on investigation, we found that this was a virtual environment running VMware with a virtual server infrastructure. We managed to log on to a domain controller that was still fully active. And whilst trawling through the hard drives of that, we noticed that we had some files that weren't there before, and a whole load of tools in a folder. So we realized pretty much instantly that we'd had some sort of ransomware attack, and our server infrastructure had been encrypted apart from a domain controller that they used to initiate the attack. So we instantly then disabled the internet into the school and out of the school, removed all network access from the server rooms to try and limit any damage out to our endpoints. And that's it. We realized then that we had a major incident on our hands. We contacted our IT partner to start getting advice. I advised the senior management team, who then started to inform the relevant authorities and the IOC. We then started to work out a plan with our IT partners of how to restore all of our data and get our servers back up and running, because we had no email, no logons. It was pen and paper time. So we started to do an investigation about how on earth did this happen? How did this get onto our system? We had some advice from our cyber insurance, which we'd only taken out a year or so before. Working with them, we did some investigations, and although we didn't find the actual keylogger that they suspect was used, we found the device that we suspect the initial attack was instigated from. We then also started trawling through the logs on the remaining domain controller to find out who'd logged on and when and what had happened. And we found that one of our IT team was creating odd accounts late at night. So we suspect a keylogger was installed on one of the surfaces, non-maliciously, probably an accidental install by a member of staff. Our IT support went to support them. He logged on with his account, which was a domain admin. They trawled the credentials from that account, logged into our systems via a VPN, and then started creating their own accounts. And this was done overnight. We suspect it all happened quite quickly. I know some of these incidents take quite a while with them doing research, but from what we could see, they got on overnight, did a sort of a net scan, found out all the devices and servers that were on the network that they could access, created a domain admin account, and started trawling through our data to see what was valuable to us. So once they were in with the domain admin account, they just had full control. There was nothing they couldn't do. Basically, they then started running the tools, which encrypted all of the servers, bar the domain controller they were actually using to initiate the attack. The immediate impact of this in the morning was that nobody was able to log on to any computers. Even if we'd have left the network connected, they wouldn't have been able to get access. We had no internet, no teaching on site or remotely, and there was no access to any of our services, including our databases, email systems. Basically, everything was off. It was back to the days of paper and pencil. So we started to do our initial recovery from the incident. Once we realized that this was an utter disaster, contacted our IT partner, got a plan into action, which took the best part of a day before we could do anything, as we were relying on them to supply us with advice on how to proceed next. Once we realized this, we put all of our virtual server environment into isolation, removed all of the infected servers, and then started doing a recovery, rebuilding domain controllers, and recovering our servers from our backups. So having Redstor being installed, and we've got about 15 terabytes of data that was stored in Redstor at the time, was absolutely a godsend, really. We did have backup software on-prem. One of the backup servers was on domain. That was fully encrypted, so they'd hit our backup systems as well. But one of our backup systems was off domain. That was unaffected. So we both had a cloud backup and some of our servers on an unaffected local backup, which I'm really glad about, because that meant we could recover 90% of the servers that were taken down. And not only that, we could recover them to a day or so in the past. So the loss of data was quite limited. The databases themselves, when we brought those back, they seemed to be unaffected. When we brought the databases back, the amount of data that was lost due to the recovery was very minimal, which was great. We then expired all the passwords of all of our users on the day and started changing all of the service passwords for all of our services, servers. Every password was basically changed on the network. That took quite some time and was quite inconvenient for our users. How bad could it have been and how successful was the recovery? Well, I believe it was a very bad attack, but it could have been a lot worse if we hadn't had multiple backups in multiple locations and a cloud backup system. If we hadn't had a cloud backup system, we would have still been at this moment with very limited services. So I was very relieved that we decided to get Redstor and the cloud. It's taken us 1 month to recover our systems so far. We got email back up and running within about 10 days. And then we were having our users coming in to reset their passwords and then get back onto email. And the school was then beginning to function again as a school within 2 weeks of the incident occurring, including the day or so of just taking an advice before we actually did anything. So we're now back up and running after a month with all of our core functions, and we're functioning fully as a school again, being able to work from home and on premise. So I felt that the incident was a massive wake-up call to the school, but the recovery was a success. We didn't even think of paying the ransom. It was a horrendously high value, and working with our cyber insurance and the security company, we had an investigation of what data was taken, and it was decided that we'd bite the bullet, inform the people that had data taken. And we were lucky that the data they took was not critical. They thought it was, but it wasn't. So we were very, very lucky there. So we're now pretty much back up and running. We've got a couple of servers that weren't very important, like a couple of CCTV servers that are now being brought back. But due to the incident, we only kept CCTV for 2 weeks anyway, so all of that data was old, so we decided to start from scratch with those. So that's pretty much a brief overview of what happened and how we recovered. And now we're in the process of ensuring that this can't happen again. The idea of having all of our IT team as all domain admins, that's not happening anymore. And now we're moving into delegation of tasks and roles for each person. It's a lot more inconvenient for the team, but we feel far more secure, and we're looking into much better antivirus, anti-malware, ransomware software, email filtering, etc. So there's a huge investment being taken place in the school now to upgrade all of these systems. And that basically is pretty much all I've got to say. I hope it was useful.
Fred, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Guys, Fred will be hanging around on the call for the Q&A. I'm just going to move into just a final recap, and then we'll move into 10 minutes or so of a Q&A. So as we know, in terms of the DfE advice, it's about ensuring the following with your IT team, that you're backing up the right data, that you are selecting the data that is critical, taking it off site and ensuring that data is retrievable, searchable and recoverable, that the backups are held offline. And as we've just heard from Fred, the value in him having his data in an offline location with Redstor enabled him to recover those systems in a very clean and quick fashion. And then finally, proving that ability to recover the data and the services from the backup. This is covered largely, and Fred used this tool, by the Redstor Instant Data tool, which effectively allows you, while you're recovering a full machine, instant access to all of the data on that machine, and the users being able to drive into the files, the folders, and the items that they need to on a priority basis, streamed back from the Redstor cloud. So how do we help you protect that? If you were hit by ransomware, how easy would it be for you to recover or rebuild a machine? Putting into context some of the challenges that Fred's just explained, how do you stop cyber criminals taking advantage of the pandemic that's going on now? We, along with the DfE, recommend you have a fire break, otherwise known as an air gap, in place, which means not having a reliance on primary backup targets on premise, which is susceptible, as we've seen, to ransomware because it's sat on your internal network. We provide end-to-end encryption, so if you back up ransomware whilst it's idle and prior to it executing, it becomes inert in the backup, so it cannot propagate into our DC. And we can also help you roll back to the point in time to when the infection occurred. If able to isolate the source of ransomware, you can recover everything apart from the data set. So recovering the data that you need instantly in a safe and timely fashion. Okay, so I'm conscious of time, guys. Bear with me. So I'll open this up to questions. We've got about 6 or 7 moments left, so I will be running. Just bear with me for 1 second. So Fred, this is a question for you. What do you suggest the best approach for IT managers within a school to convince heads and governors that they have to take the risk seriously? I've lost count of the number of times the head says, oh, offsite backup is expensive. We will just continue with on-site USB as it's free. They know ransomware is a problem, but will never act on it. What would you say to that, Fred?
We've had several ransomware attacks in the past, and trying to let the powers be know that if this attack had happened and been really serious in the past, that the loss of business continuity has a massive cost associated with that. And it's persuading them that the financial loss of the lack of teaching in a school in particular is quite an expensive thing. And when you take a balanced view, that cost of loss of business continuity, it is far more than the cost of actually getting a decent security system with a decent backup in the background.
That's brilliant, Fred. Thank you very much. Chris, one for you and Nick. Can you help me understand the risk probability around ransomware? You highlighted earlier some of the controls that will help protect. Is it reasonable to assume that if firewalls, antivirus, Windows app updates are all in place, that the ransomware threat is significantly reduced? And have you seen any instances where ransomware has penetrated the controls?
So with the amount of different instances out there, yes, there are patterns, but you can only comment on that after the incident, which is, I guess, not overly helpful. But if you refer back to the small business guide from the National Cybersecurity Centre, with using the toolkit of all the various products, controls, and services that you have described in that document, the commentary is that the majority of cybercrime could be prevented. So there is no figure or percentage you can put on that answer to say that if you implement 90% of the controls, blah, 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 you can stop that. It is that the majority of cybercrime incidents can be prevented if you activate the controls within that document. And I've put the link to the small business guide as an answer to that question.
Thank you very much. Question for
just
Fred.
because of underreporting. Sorry, Ed. Just because of underreporting, it's really difficult to really understand, the size and scale of the threat. But ultimately, exactly what Chris says. We defer to the NCSC. This is preventable.
Brilliant. Yeah, actually, guys, while I've got you on, another question. One question on how prevalent is social engineering? And it just says, I didn't see it mentioned, but assume it was in the 5 to 6% of other.
Yeah, it's there. It is a recognised tactic that the threat actors will use. It can be there online or in person. So you obviously get the physical social engineering, where someone might turn up to your reception desk, obviously pretending to be someone they're not. Everyone can refer to the hard hat and the high-vis jacket wearers, which will come in and try and access your building. To your staff, could be down the pub or the cafe, unknowingly chatting to someone about something that could be sensitive, or they could even log into public Wi-Fi without using the virtual private network. But again, having staff training that will highlight the basic mitigation tactics. So if you're ever going to use public Wi-Fi, please make sure you're using a virtual private network, a VPN. You can load those onto many devices for free, and that encrypts all your traffic. So if you accidentally log on to a piece of rogue public Wi-Fi, it will protect you. And again, clean desk policy. So if someone does get into your building, they can't find anything because it's all locked away. It's not left on desks. And watching out for those unguarded conversations with people that you really shouldn't be having that discussion with. So a combination of training and awareness can stop social engineering.
Thank you. One for you, Fred. Was Haberdasher's email within 365 at the time?
Right, we're basically, most of our email is still on-prem in an Exchange server, but we're preparing to migrate all of our emails to the 365 in the cloud. We do have about 90 of our users are in the cloud, but the remaining users, about 1,500 of them are still on-prem. We're waiting until we've got adequate security on our cloud systems before we put the bulk of the emails up there. So that's something that's in progress at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you, Fred. And just one for you, Fred. Are you able to advise on what malware ransomware variant was used in the exploit, if you do know that?
Yes, I do know that. The recent one that caused the major hassles was called Sodin Biki, and it was a member of the Ryuk family.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Fred. Okay, so I'll take a question for the final moment. So you recommend that we should back up data off-site. How do we best do this when all our data is cloud-based in SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive? Just very briefly, Redstor provide a very different data protection solution for the 365 environment to some of our peers in the marketplace. We actually bring the data from the production environment of Microsoft and pull it into our 2 sovereign data centers located in the UK. So that means that in that recovery scenario, even if Microsoft are having a bad day, you guys can still continue to work. You can still continue with that instant data methodology that we spoke about and access that data on a user-driven basis in a very instantaneous fashion. Now, I know, guys, there's a number of questions remaining. I'm conscious that we are now at the end of the time. We will contact people directly who've put questions in and reply with some answers. And we will be also making available the slides and the video after this. A link will be sent to everyone, including a lot of the people who unfortunately were unable to join. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Chris and Nick and also Fred. Unfortunately, James couldn't get on for technical reasons, but hopefully you guys have found this session informative, useful, and there's our contact details should you wish to get in touch with more information. We will be following up with you as well. Thank you very much for your time.